The 911 call sounded like the voice of a worried wife, trembling, breathless, frantic. But hidden beneath every quiver was a secret she had already confessed: her husband wasn't missing at all. He was dead, and she knew exactly where she had buried him. For years, Megan Hart had been the image of suburban perfection in the quiet town of Redfield, Virginia. Her life with her husband, Daniel Hart, looked almost picturesque from the outside: a spacious two-story home, a thriving business he had built from scratch, 3 children who adored their father, and Sunday barbecues with neighbors who saw the couple as a model family. Daniel, 39, was the reliable one, steady, patient, a man who worked long hours but always came home with a warm smile for his kids. Megan, 36, was the social one, charismatic, polished, always smiling at school events and community gatherings. But behind the walls of their home, the marriage was quietly rotting. Arguments had become a regular soundtrack in the Hart household. What started as small disagreements grew into long nights of slammed doors and painful silence. Trust eroded. Patience vanished. Resentment stitched itself into every conversation. Daniel's steady nature turned rigid. Megan's charm twisted into cold defiance. And then came the affair. It began as friendship: a man named Ryan Clark, someone Megan met while volunteering at a community fitness event. Younger, energetic, with a reckless confidence Daniel never had. Their connection escalated quickly, fueled by the thrill of secrecy and the validation Megan felt she'd been missing for years. Ryan made her feel desired again, alive again. Daniel's discovery of the relationship marked the point of no return. He confronted her one late evening after finding messages on her tablet, messages that made clear just how far things had gone. His face, normally so calm, had contorted into something wounded and unrecognizable. Megan remembered the way his voice cracked when he asked, "How long?" and how hers trembled when she whispered, "Long enough." The tension that followed hardened into something dangerous. Daniel withdrew emotionally, then physically, spending more nights at his office and speaking to her only when absolutely necessary. Megan, feeling cornered, leaned deeper into her affair. Ryan became her escape, the person she vented to, the one who told her she deserved happiness, the one who fed the idea that Daniel held her back. The more the marriage deteriorated, the more desperate Megan became to hold on to the version of life she believed she deserved. And on a frigid winter night, that desperation reached its limit. After weeks of explosive arguments, icy glares, and whispered threats of divorce, the breaking point finally arrived. The house was silent except for the hum of the heater and the steady rhythm of Daniel's breathing as he slept. The moonlight through the bedroom window fell across the drawer where he kept his firearm, a weapon he used only at the shooting range, never imagining it would one day be turned against him. Megan stood over him, her pulse pounding in her ears. She told herself it was self-preservation. She told herself the children needed peace. She told herself that Daniel, deep down, wanted the suffering between them to end. But the truth was simpler, and far darker. With a single, irreversible motion, she chose her future over his life. The gunshot echoed through the bedroom, a sharp crack that seemed to freeze the air. Daniel jerked once, then fell still, his breath silenced forever. Megan's hands shook violently at first, then, slowly, they steadied. She walked out of the room, closing the door behind her as if turning the final page of a story she had grown tired of reading. Outside, the world slept peacefully, unaware that a mother, a wife, had just crossed a line she could never return from. In the moments after the gunshot, Megan stood frozen in the hallway, her breath shallow, her heartbeat violent. The house was still, impossibly still, as though holding its breath with her. She waited for the sound of footsteps from the children's rooms, for someone to stir, for anything to pull her back into the reality of what she'd done. But the house remained silent. Bit by bit, Megan's shock shifted into calculation. She returned to the bedroom, stepping carefully, as if afraid to disturb the air around Daniel's body. His face, once familiar and expressive, was now slack and pale. She forced herself not to touch him, not to look too long. Instead, she stared at the gun still in her hand. That weapon, his weapon, would be her scapegoat, her shield, her story. Within an hour, she had begun the cover-up she would later deliver to police with a trembling voice and an award-worthy expression of dread. She dragged Daniel's body from the bed, gritting her teeth as she pulled his dead weight across the carpet. The smell, metallic and sharp, clung to her clothes. She wiped sweat from her forehead with a shaking arm, pausing only when she thought she heard a creak upstairs. The children were asleep. Thank God. In the garage, she wrestled a large plastic container from the shelves, the kind Daniel once used for storing camping gear. She lined it with trash bags, then maneuvered his body inside. Every movement scraped and thudded, sounds that made her chest tighten with panic. When she managed to close the lid, she leaned over the container, breathing hard, whispering to herself, "It's done. It's done." But it wasn't even close to done. The cleanup took the rest of the night. She scrubbed the mattress, then realized she couldn't salvage it. Before sunrise, she had called a 24-hour store and bought a new one, paying in cash and loading it into the back of the family SUV. Returning home, she stripped the bed frame, tossed the blood-stained mattress into the garage, and set up the new one just the way Daniel always liked it, though he would never lie on it again. His phone was next. She smashed it on the driveway, the pieces scattering across the concrete like shattered secrets. She tossed the fragments into different trash bins around town later that morning. When the children woke up, she served breakfast with a smile too wide, too bright, her voice too cheerful. "Daddy's working early today," she told them, brushing syrup from her daughter's cheek. "He'll be home soon." But her lover, Ryan, wasn't fooled. That afternoon, unable to carry the weight alone, she drove to his apartment. Her hands trembled as she lifted the knock to his door. When he opened it, her entire facade cracked. "I did it," she whispered, her voice empty. "It's done." Ryan stared at her, confusion turning into alarm. He stepped back, motioning her inside. "What do you mean, done? Megan, what are you talking about?" She closed the door behind her. The smell of his cologne, the same scent that had filled her fantasies, now made her stomach twist. "I killed him," she said. "Last night. He's gone." Ryan froze, the color draining from his face. Megan kept talking, her voice disturbingly calm as she described the shot, the cleanup, the container in the garage. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking anymore. She was cold, matter-of-fact. Ryan felt a chill run through him. This wasn't passion anymore. It wasn't love. It was a nightmare. He tried to back away, but her eyes followed him. "You're the only one I can trust," she said. "The only one who understands." He didn't understand. He didn't want to understand. And when she left, he sat on the couch in stunned silence, staring at the door she had closed behind her. His heart pounded. His hands shook. He needed proof, something to protect himself if this spiraled further. So he grabbed his phone. The next time she visited, he pressed record. The recordings began the next evening. Ryan had barely slept. Every creak of his apartment, every passing car, made his nerves snap tighter. He kept replaying Megan's words in his mind, the quiet way she said, "I killed him," as if announcing a chore she'd finally crossed off her list. He had been infatuated once, even obsessed, but now he felt trapped inside a situation darker than anything he'd imagined. When Megan knocked, he steadied his phone on the kitchen counter, screen down, recording. He forced his voice to sound normal before opening the door. Megan stepped inside wearing a calm, oddly relieved expression. Her hair was neatly tied back, her clothes spotless, her demeanor controlled. It chilled him. "I moved him this morning," she said immediately, as though picking up a conversation they'd paused only minutes ago. "The kids were at school, so I loaded the container in the SUV. Ryan swallowed. And then? She walked deeper into the room, speaking casually, almost conversationally. I drove to the old service road near Ridgeview. You know, the one that leads into the woods? No one goes there. It took a while to dig deep enough, but it's done. She paused, glancing at him with a small, eerie smile. No one will ever find him. Ryan's stomach churned. Her tone, her lightness, the almost proud lift of her chin, it didn't match the horror of what she described. He forced himself to ask questions, hoping his voice didn't sound as horrified as he felt. And, his things? I took care of everything, she said. The phone is gone, the bed is handled, the house is clean. There's nothing left that points to me. She looked away thoughtfully. I smashed the mattress tags and cut out the old ones before throwing the old mattress into the dump. They won't trace anything. She sounded like someone describing a home renovation, not the disposal of her husband's body. Another day passed. And another. Each time she came back, each time she let down her guard, Ryan recorded her. He asked small questions, gentle prodding, subtle nudges, and captured chilling details of her actions in her own voice. Her detachment only grew. On the fourth day, she sat on his couch, idly twisting a strand of hair. You know, she murmured, I thought I'd feel guilty. But I don't. Not really. It's quiet now. Peaceful. Ryan felt his skin prickle. Megan, you need help, he whispered before he could stop himself. Her eyes flicked toward him, suddenly sharp. You're not turning on me, she said softly. You and we're in this together. No, he said quickly, raising both hands. I just mean, this is a lot to carry alone. Her expression softened into something almost tender. I know. But you're the only one I have. He forced a nod, his heart knocking against his ribs. By the end of the week, Daniel's workplace reported him missing. He hadn't shown up for his morning meetings, hadn't replied to emails, hadn't answered his phone. His colleagues called Megan repeatedly, but she let the calls ring until she knew the timing was right. Only when she felt confident in her story did she pick up the phone and dial 911. She forced a shakiness into her voice, rehearsed breathlessness. My husband, he hasn't come home. I'm scared something happened to him. The operator gently questioned her. Megan cried on cue, a tight, practiced sob that Ryan would later hear through the thin apartment walls when she replayed it for him, proud of her performance. The search began immediately. Police canvassed the area, spoke with neighbors, pinged Daniel's phone, though it had long been destroyed. Megan greeted officers with trembling hands and a fragile smile. She held her children close. She asked questions, offered suggestions, played the role of the devastated spouse flawlessly. But the wall of lies began to crack sooner than she expected. When detectives entered the Hart home for a routine walkthrough, they noticed small details that didn't fit: faint stains in the bedroom carpet, an unusually new mattress, cleaning products still damp under the sink, a faint chemical smell despite her insistence she hadn't cleaned recently. And the children, too young to fully understand, said just a bit too much. Mommy washed Daddy's side of the room twice, her youngest admitted innocently. He left without his shoes, another said. The detectives exchanged quiet, knowing glances. Meanwhile, Ryan's recordings weighed heavily in his pocket every day. He replayed the audio again and again in private, listening to Megan's cool admissions, her unflinching descriptions, her eerie lack of remorse. He felt as though he were carrying a live bomb, one that could explode the moment Megan sensed he was no longer loyal. He didn't know how long he could keep pretending. But he did know one thing with certainty. Soon, the police would stop calling it a missing person case. And when they did, everything would unravel. Within 48 hours of Megan's 911 call, the atmosphere around the Hart home shifted. What had begun as a sympathetic search for a missing father slowly evolved into something colder, sharper, an investigative lens focusing directly on Megan. Detectives noticed inconsistencies. Megan avoided certain questions. Her timeline wavered with each retelling. She repeated phrases as though memorized. And her overly calm demeanor raised quiet suspicions. Still, she played her role, the sleepless wife, the anxious mother, the victim of unexplained abandonment. But evidence was beginning to pile up, evidence she couldn't charm her way past. A detective noticed the faint shadow of staining near the baseboard of the bedroom wall. A forensics tech examined the oddly new mattress Megan claimed she bought months ago. A neighbor reported hearing what sounded like a loud pop late at night, a detail Megan insisted must have been fireworks, though no one else heard any. Investigators requested digital records. That's when things began to truly unravel. Megan's SUV had been equipped with software that logged route history. When detectives pulled the data, they found something impossible to ignore, a 3-hour trip to the remote Ridgeview Service Road, the same morning Megan had claimed she spent home with the kids, worried sick. Her explanation, "I drove around clearing my head," did nothing to help her. The more they pressed, the more nervous she became. Meanwhile, Ryan felt his own world closing in. Megan visited him constantly, her conversations spiraling into dark territory. "You understand why it had to happen," she insisted one night, pacing his living room with restless energy. "He was going to destroy everything, the kids, the house, the life we were building." "We weren't building anything," Ryan wanted to say, but didn't. He forced out a small nod instead, discreetly ensuring his phone was angled correctly on the counter. That night, he captured her most chilling statement yet. "I didn't even hesitate," she whispered. "I waited until he was asleep. One second he was breathing, the next he wasn't. It was almost peaceful." The words froze his blood. This wasn't love. This wasn't desperation. This was a woman unmoored from reality, and he knew it was only a matter of time before she sensed his fear. When the police returned for a second search of the Hart home, Megan's composure finally cracked. She hovered near the detectives, offering explanations for everything before they even asked. "That stain? Daniel spilled wine months ago. That chemical smell? I was cleaning the kids' bathroom. The new mattress? It was on sale." Her voice tightened. Her eyes darted. Sweat glossed her forehead. The detective calmly noted each detail, each contradiction. Then came the moment she wasn't prepared for. A detective approached her with a small evidence bag. Inside was a tiny smear collected from the carpet beneath the bed frame. "Mrs. Hart," he said quietly, "this tested positive for blood." Megan's lips parted, but no sound came out. "And it's a match to your husband." For the first time since the night she pulled the trigger, Megan felt real fear. Her parents were brought in shortly afterward, James and Laura Whitfield, respected members of the community. They arrived in a rush, pale and shaken. But instead of urging their daughter to cooperate, they leaned in close, whispering urgently to her while detectives observed from across the room. "We'll fix this," her mother said. "We'll handle whatever they found." "They can't prove anything without the body," her father added. The detectives watched every word, every gesture. Their interest in the Whitfields surged instantly. The next day, surveillance footage surfaced, footage from a hardware store 2 towns over. Megan's parents were seen purchasing tarps, heavy-duty gloves, bleach, and a shovel on the very morning investigators believed the body had been moved. When confronted, both parents denied everything, but their hesitation, their stumbling explanations, and the unmistakable panic in their eyes only deepened the storm forming around them. Meanwhile, Ryan reached the point of no return. He sat on his couch long after midnight, staring at his phone. At the audio files. At the nightmare he was living in. He knew what the right thing was. he also knew what the dangerous thing was. In the end, he made the only choice he could live with. He called the police. And when detectives arrived at his door, he handed them his phone, unlocked, the recordings cued, Megan's voice echoing through the small apartment. "I killed him. I buried him. And no one will ever find him." For investigators, it was the moment everything shifted. For Megan, it would become the moment her entire world collapsed. The moment investigators listened to the recordings Ryan provided, the case shifted from suspicion to certainty. Megan's own voice, calm, unshaken, almost detached, described the killing in such detail that even the most seasoned detectives felt a chill crawl up their spine. Her words were a confession no one could argue away. Police returned to the Hart home early the next morning. The children were escorted gently to a neighbor's house while Megan stepped onto the porch, confusion painted across her face as she spotted the cruisers lining her street. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice thin, unsteady. Detective Harris met her eyes with a steady calm. "Megan Hart, you're under arrest." The moment the cuffs clicked around her wrists, her legs buckled. She didn't fall, her father caught her elbow, but the shock on her face was unmistakable. Not guilt. Not remorse. It was disbelief. As if she had never imagined the world she controlled so carefully could ever turn against her. Her parents protested immediately. "This is ridiculous," her mother snapped. "You have no proof. You're targeting our daughter," her father insisted, stepping forward. "Where's your warrant?" Detectives remained composed. "We have her confession on recording," Harris said simply. Silence snapped through the air like a whip. At the station, Megan's facade cracked again and again. She denied everything at first, then claimed the recordings were manipulated, then insisted she had been venting and dramatizing, even suggesting that Ryan had pressured her into role-playing disturbing scenarios. But the tone of her voice in the recordings, cold, factual, unshaken, betrayed her. Meanwhile, investigators pressed her parents separately. Under questioning, their story began to crumble. Their purchases, the tarps, the gloves, the shovel, combined with cell tower pings showing they traveled near Ridgeview the same day Megan drove there, painted a damaging picture. The Whitfields insisted they were helping their daughter clean the garage. Detectives didn't believe a word. Within a week, both were charged with multiple counts of obstruction of justice and evidence tampering. Still, the most haunting element remained the missing body. Despite days of searching, K9 teams, drones, volunteers combing through the woods, nothing surfaced. The ground was uneven, the soil deep, the wooded area expansive. Megan refused to cooperate, simply repeating, "I don't know where they're looking," as though Daniel's remains were an inconvenience, not a tragedy. When her trial began, the courtroom overflowed. Reporters from nearby cities filled the benches, sketch artists captured each shift of expression, and the victim's family sat together in a tense, silent row. The prosecution opened with Ryan's audio recordings. The moment Megan's voice echoed through the courtroom speakers, the air changed. There was no drama in her tone, no rage, no anguish, just a chilling simplicity. "I didn't hesitate. I did what I had to do." Jurors stiffened visibly. Prosecutors painted a clear narrative, a failing marriage, an affair that became obsession, a calculated act carried out while Daniel slept, followed by a meticulously staged disappearance. They described the digital trail, the cleaned bedroom, the new mattress, the blood analysis, the smashed phone, the late-night drives, and the parents' suspicious involvement. They explained how Megan rehearsed her missing person report, studying her own voice until she sounded convincingly broken. Then came the digital mapping of her SUV's route, a damning sequence of coordinates pointing straight toward the most remote parts of Ridgeview Forest. And next, the recordings. The courtroom sat frozen while Megan described, in her own voice, each step of her plan. Even the defense attorney looked shaken. Megan's attempt at a defense fell apart from the start. She claimed she had been coerced by Ryan, manipulated emotionally, even threatened by him. But there were no threats in the recordings, no pressure, no fear, nothing but her own cold certainty. Worse, Ryan's testimony painted her as increasingly erratic, paranoid, and volatile, unpredictable in her emotions and disturbingly calm when describing the worst details. When Megan took the stand, she attempted to cry, to tremble, to behave like a terrified mother unjustly accused. But each time the prosecutor played another recording, her tears dried instantly. Jurors noticed. The climax came when the prosecutor ended cross-examination with 7 words that echoed through the silent courtroom. "If you didn't do it, why confess?" Megan didn't answer. She stared ahead, jaw tight, eyes hollow, as if the truth she had built her life around had finally cracked into pieces too sharp to gather. When the verdict finally came, the courtroom fell into a hush so complete that even the faint hum of the ceiling lights seemed loud. Jurors filed in with solemn expressions, each glance heavy with the weight of weeks of testimony, evidence, and Megan's own chilling words. The foreperson stood. "We find the defendant, Megan Hart, guilty on all counts." A gasp escaped from someone in the gallery. Daniel's sister covered her mouth, tears sliding down her cheeks. Megan's parents froze, their expressions collapsing into disbelief and quiet devastation. Megan herself didn't cry, didn't protest, she simply stared forward, her face empty, as though the reality of the moment hadn't fully reached her. The judge's voice cut through the silence. "For the murder of Daniel Hart, and for the deliberate staging and obstruction that followed, this court sentences you to life in prison." Life. A word that echoed like a door slamming shut. Megan's knees buckled slightly, and for the first time, true fear flickered across her face. She looked toward her children seated in the back, their small hands held tightly by a family friend. They didn't run to her. They didn't reach for her. Their eyes were wide, confused, hurting. Their mother had taken their father. And now the justice system was taking her. She whispered something, a single word that no one could hear, before deputies led her away in cuffs. Her parents stood immediately, shouting that the court had made a mistake, insisting they'd appeal. But deputies stepped between them, mirroring the same calm resolve they had held since day one. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed relentlessly. Reporters spoke into microphones as townspeople watched quietly, some shaking their heads, others whispering prayers for the children now at the center of a tragedy they never asked for. The Whitfields continued to face their own charges. Their attempts to protect their daughter, or shield themselves, had backfired spectacularly. The tarps, gloves, bleach, and shovel they purchased became powerful symbols of the lengths they went to hide the truth. Though their sentences were far lighter than Megan's, the stain on their reputations was permanent. They retreated from public life, rarely seen outside their home. The most heartbreaking piece of the case remained unresolved. Despite months of searching, Daniel's body was never recovered. Ridgeview Forest held its secrets tightly, and investigators eventually conceded that without Megan's cooperation, which she refused, the chances of finding the burial site dwindled with each passing season. Daniel's family continued searching every year, clearing underbrush, scouring ravines, digging through cold patches of earth in hope of bringing him home. His children grew up in the care of relatives, haunted not by a mystery, but by a truth far more suffocating, both parents lost in a single act. One taken by violence, the other by her own choices. Ryan Clark remained a pivotal figure in the case, though he disappeared from public view soon after the trial ended. His recordings had sealed Megan's fate, but his involvement left him deeply shaken. Some said he moved out of state. Others whispered he lived with the heavy guilt of ever entering her life in the first place. Redfield itself moved forward, slowly, quietly, forever changed. Neighbors who once waved at Megan during school drop-offs found themselves replaying every friendly smile, every calm greeting, searching for the warning signs they wished they had seen. The Hart home was eventually sold, renovated, and relived in, though longtime residents still avoided walking past it after dark. In the years to come, the case would be taught in law classes, used in investigative training, and dissected in forums dedicated to criminal psychology. A textbook example of obsession, deception, and the terrifying calm of a woman who believed she could rewrite reality. But at its core, it remained a human tragedy. A husband gone. A wife imprisoned. 3 children left with scars no court could heal. And a community forever grappling with the question, how well do we ever truly know the people we love? Some crimes echo long after the evidence is filed away, not because of the brutality, but because of the quiet choices made behind closed doors. In the end, the disappearance of Daniel Hart was never a mystery. It was a warning: when deception becomes survival, and love becomes leverage, the truth always claws its way to the surface, no matter how deep it's buried.